tarpon fishing and bone fishing gave me a chance to do something at a fairly high level again. And so the last 40 years, I dedicated my life to it. So the casting stuff, you know, what I just showed you out there, it's been a lot of work with Lefty Cray and Ed Jarowski at the trade shows. We used to work for like at least an hour every day for lunch, hour and a half. Ed Jarowski would get out his computer, talk about power bands, and Lefty would go cast. So I've learned from the best. And I probably fish more in the salt than those guys combined. So it's not only understanding the techniques, but it's also being out there and learning, you know, when you're in the middle of that windstorm, trying to figure out how to do it. There are 5 elements to being really good at this. It's about reading the fish before you ever throw the fly. And we have to understand too what we're looking at, so we're not always relying on the guide. Because when you get really good at this, and the guy's telling you, okay, tick, 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 move it, slide it, tick, tick, you don't want to hear that. Because I feel like he's stealing from me. When I get a fish on, when I throw to a fish and I'm trying to feed a fish, that relationship with me and the fish, that's mine, right? So even when my son tries to tell me what to do, I turn and go, really? You know, because that's the game we're playing, and it's very personal. So when you learn this, when you fish a lot, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. So it's reading the fish, we'll talk about it, presenting the fly, feeding the animal. How do you make a fish bite the fly? Setting the hook, which is done in a very definitive way, and then fighting the animal. We'll talk about fish fighting here too. You know, if you take a look at what we do, they say it's about the journey. And, you know, if you take a look at our lives and what we've done, we think about all the great places we've been and the great friends we've shared everything with. In tarpon fishing, this is, you know, why we love it. So when I talk about reading the fish and presenting the fly, I like my odds for this picture here, right? But when we break it down, so often I've seen, even from experience, you know, where do I put the fly? When we talk about reading the fish and presenting the fly, what am I looking at here, right? This is a big, massive fish coming at me. And when I get here, whoops, how'd that come up? So this is just a mullet run in the fall. A couple nice pictures, but this is something I want you to see. See where that rod tip is? And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we're talking about fighting the fish. We want that rod tip, sometimes it's going to be right here next above the fly. If that rod tip is right next to that fish's face, I can control his face. If you're standing on a boat and that fish is right next to the boat and your rod is up here, you have no control of that fish. Now you get tired, we'll talk about it a little bit more. You reach up here and you break your rod. So that leader's got to be wound all the way down into your reel. Now you have a straight rod. The critical angle, the rod is straight. Now I can move that fish's face wherever I want to move his face.
Andy?
Yes, sir.
How do you manage the leader length in a view? I'm looking at that.
So my leader is about 13 to 16 feet long. So my rod is 8 feet. So I've got, what, 10 feet? So I got 6 feet of leader in my reel. And one of the things you have to remember is that, you'll see a photograph, I used to tape a couple of fingers because I have blood knots on those leaders, and the leader, right? So when that fish needs to run and surge, when you let go, you fully let go so that leader slides out of the reel and through your fingers. So it's not going to hurt you or cut you, right? And you'll see a little bit more when I get down here a little bit further. But yeah, so you can see that's 10 feet of leader, so I got 6 feet in my reel. And most people don't know how to do that. What do you do when you see a big old fish do that, right? You're just along for the ride. You're just along for the ride. So reading the fish, there's a lot of different locations where the fish will be swimming on the ocean in clear water. They may be in the backcountry, Florida Bay, or we're in 10,000 miles, this is a sleeping fish. I know when this fish is laying here like this, all I want to do is show the fish the fly. Back in the day, I mean, it's gotten a little bit tougher, but I know this fish, if I can get that fly going right across his face right there, he's going to bite it. So, but it's got to be close because he can't see very far, right, in that mud. There's another sleeping fish with that tail sticking up. So this fish is sliding a little bit. This is Curtis Point down above Ocean Reefs. You guys know where Curtis Point is? You all fished there before by chance? So it's a very famous place that Bill Curtis used to fish. So as an angler, and I see these fish coming down this point here, where do I put my fly? I know these fish have already got by me, right? So a 90-degree angle is always bad. But what about this fish over here? See all this clear water in front of him? I'm going to put my fly out here somewhere, so I'm not going to bother these fish. I look for that lone fish where I can get a nice clean shot. Again here, the 90-degree, if I'm standing here, these fish are already moving there. I've got to go to the back of the string. I've got to find a fresh fish with a great angle. Again, this is the same type of a scenario. This is down in Marathon. I have a couple fish over here, or I can make a backhand cast, right? Flip the fly on the back of one of these fish and try to feed one of these trailing fish. So when I talk about reading the fish, this is what I'm talking about. Not only am I reading the fish here, I'm looking at what's in the water. If you see all this grass, I know there's going to be a bunch of shrimp with all this grass. So I'm going to tie on a shrimp fly.
Where do you want the fly in the water column?
We'll talk about that in a second. I'm almost there. That'll be presenting the flies. We're reading the fish right now. So again, I'm going to probably let these fish go by. I'm going to look for a fish over here that I can probably get my fly to. I can't go up the middle, right? If I spook these fish, these fish are going to pull all these fish out of the way. We don't flock cast like you flock shoot, right? You pick out one animal. So this is a daisy chain, and we used to think when these fish used to daisy chain that they were spawning, and they're not. Through BTT, we realized that through the tagging program that these fish under a big full moon, they'll go offshore into 400 feet of water and spawn offshore. This is almost like the prom, you know? Everybody's sizing everybody up. Who do you want to date? And they're hanging out. And a lot of times when I used to fish Homosassa, there used to be a big female laying in the middle of a big daisy chain. So when we fish a daisy chain like this, if you have real fresh fish, maybe baby fish or innocent fish, maybe fish in different countries, you can put the fly in here somewhere and get a bite. But again, see how the fish are coming towards me? How this daisy chain is spinning in a clockwise position? I'm going to try to feed this fish over here, or this fish. Never fish going away or at 90 degrees. Always at fish coming toward you. Here's a 3-fish little chain here. Certain conditions, you'll have muddy water like in Florida Bay where it's really murky. You'll see a fish roll, and they always exhale and breathe and blow out bubbles. So if the bubbles are moving, you can kind of guess how deep the water is and how fast those bubbles are moving, because we have to figure out how to intercept the fish with our fly. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is they throw the fly to the fish. Now, I'm talking tarpon, right? Unless they're laid up. I'm talking about in general, don't throw the fly to the fish that's a fish that's moving. We have to allow that fly and the fish to intercept together in the right level of the water column. So this fish rolled and blooped up, and he's stationary. So I know I can probably just throw that black fly right here, keep throwing, and pretty soon you'll get tight. Just sliding fish back in flamingo, shallower water. That one rolled and parked. That fish is not moving. So I got to figure out where that head is. What's interesting, and if you fish in Isla Morada or maybe even up towards Ocean Reef, sometimes you'll see a fish like in the fall when the schools are coming up from the south or moving north, you'll see a brown-backed fish. That fish will bite your fly like 80% of the time. And I used to think, why? Because we used to always say if they're high in brown, they're going to suck it down. They're going to eat your fly. Get it to the brown-backed fish. Well, I started to realize, too, that I kind of started thinking, are these fish migrating and they're tired? You know, why is this fish brown? Well, I figured out that most likely it's a backcountry fish from Florida Bay, and all those fish are hanging out in the mud, off-color water. So on a big tide, they may have come through the bridges, Channel 2, Channel 5, they get on the ocean, now they're traveling north. So that's the fish I want to get my fly to. Again, this is about reading fish. These are the type of things I'm looking for in the bow of a boat. Now, yes, sir?
Is that because they're more aggressive or they're looking for food more?
They're just not as smart.
Oh.
The backcountry fish, I love those dumb fish, man. Smart fish don't eat flies very well. Again, so here, you know, if I'm in a tournament, you're figuring out, like a lot of times, what fish do I want to go to? Again, I'm trying to figure out, what am I looking at here? Here's a fish here that's got clean water. I can probably get my fly to this fish. I might be losing my angle here. A lot of times those lead fish you want to leave alone because they're always more wary than the other fish. Casting and presenting the fly. Okay, so we're going to talk about here, where do I put that fly? So this fish is laid up. There's no current, right? Like a lot of times you'll use current to get the fly to the fish. You want to get that fly about this far away from the fish's face, without him realizing how that fly got there, right? So in this situation, I can't put the fly very far away because he's just laying there. So you just slide it in there, you know, and then we'll talk about feeding the fish here in a minute, but you're trying to figure out where to get the fly and in what part of the where the fish's face is. Now that's not a very good cast, right? But knowing that this fish is laid up in mud, back in the day, you could slide that fly, just get all the slack out, slide it forward, try to move your rod tip over here, get it right in front of the fish's face, and pow, it comes flying out of the water. So even though that is a bad cast, there's certain situations where you've got to fish it out. You know, stay in the game. Don't just say, fuck, I missed that shot, you know. Don't give up. Fish that fish until there's no longer a shot. So one of the cardinal rules in any fishing is one cast, one fish, right? So if you've got to cast 2 or 3 times to a bonefish, most likely when you see that tail no longer happy, moving like this and it gets stiff, he knows you're there. So one cast, one fish. Make sure you wait for your shot. Like, I have friends that can throw 90 feet. It's like, then they got to throw again 90 feet. Now they're throwing over there and the fish is past us. It's like, dude, wait for your shot. Wait for the fish to get close, right? Then you make your one shot, get it in the right spot. Now you have a chance to feed that fish. So swimming fish down the ocean, here's a prime example where I can make my cast well out in front of these fish, but long. Because the fish on the ocean sometimes will veer in and out, right? So if that fish continues straight, I can just sweep my rod tip here, pick up my slack, now I can start feeding that fish. If that fish veers to the outside, my fly's in the right position. If he veers to the inside, I sweep my rod all the way over here, pick up my slack, wait for the fish. I got my fly, bump, 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 and I got him here. So that one cast has covered those 3 different angles. Same over here. So if I use an all clear fly line and a 15-foot leader or a clear tip, which is what I've been using the last number of years, I can let this fish slide under my leader or my clear tip if it's a little bit murky, and I can feed a bigger fish behind that fish. So as an angler on the boat, we're watching this chess game unfold. You know, pieces of parts are sliding, but we have to figure out, what are we going to do with these fish that are coming down the pike? So if you have a fish coming straight on, there's nothing more you can do than go to the fish here. One of the things that's interesting, that if you make your cast over to the side and they're swimming towards you, if you keep the fly in front of the fish, you can pull that fish off that line. So fish your cast, stay in the game. Unless it's way over here, then you slide it out and try to get it up in here somewhere, right? So you can always, if the fly's out here, you know, and you keep pulling it with the fish, he can slide over and grab it. Now here's an interesting scenario here, you might have a monster leading a string here. Usually that lead fish does not bite, but if it's a giant fish, you're not going to catch him unless you get the fly in front of him, right? Or you can let him slide by and you can start cutting the string. So this is what cutting the string is like. You put that fly on the back of this lead fish and try to feed these fish. When these fish don't bite your flies here, recast to this fish. There might be more. So if it's a long string, you might get 4 or 5 or 6 good shots at that long string, but make sure you keep casting to fresh fish. So many people will keep casting to that lead fish, right? So cast the lead fish once. Doesn't bite, pick it up, cast it to a trailing fish. Now the angle's good, right? It's kind of coming more here rather than here. That 90-degree shot does not work. Keep casting the fish coming from the back.
Yeah, I have a question. Will you ever try to target a fish that's facing back of you, or a group that's facing back, like running out?
It's going away?
Yeah, like with permit, like you could do that, but you'll have to basically put the fly like on either side and try to turn it around. I don't know if Tarpon will do that.
No. I learned a lesson recently. He said, "Do you ever cast to fish that are going away?" No. But I will cast to a fish that's deeper in the water column laying there. So if you're in like a basin and you have a laid up fish, but he's down on the bottom, right, just sleeping. So I did a TV show with Jared Raskob a number of years ago. And I've never done this before. I might even have one of these flies. He said, cast 20 feet past that fish. Let it sink. And I had, I think, a clear tip line, long leader. And then I just kept the slack out. And I just kept bringing the fly back right at him, right? I've never fished like this before. The fish came up like this and ate my fly. So I learned something there, right? That these fish are opportunistic, where they could be lying in current and just sipping on stuff coming at them. Tarpon are kind of lazy for the most part, right? That's why you see them at boat docks. They want free food. You'll never see a bonefish or a permit at a dock. So I would never cast to a fish that's swimming away, for the most part, if they're on the ocean going fairly fast. But if they're laying there or kind of softly sliding, then I would do that. But I just learned that 5 years ago. Again, reading the situation, heavy falling tide off of like Craig Key, which you'll never fish because Rob Fordyce lives there. Or Mikey Ellers, or John Donnell. Again, I've got to read the situations. When we're on the bow of the boat, we have to read the fish, the current, the wind, because the wind will tell me how to make that cast, backhand cast, forehand cast, all these things we talked about in the parking lot. Heavy falling tide, because ultimately I want that fly right here in front of that fish. So if you're in a channel and the fish are rolling in a channel, tarpon love to eat flies just like Atlantic salmon do. They love to eat flies on the swing. So like here, you can see I'll have fish rolling and they're kind of staged up in a channel, cast well above them and past them and fish them on the swing.
So that would be like a dead drift?
You will have the fly, you're not stripping the fly to you, but there is tension, right? Because you cast all the way, the current is swinging it. You might even mend your line a little bit, because that fly, you want the fly swinging right here, right in front of them. Again, we want to intercept the fish with our fly. So you can see where I cast way up here and let it sink down to that fish coming. Daisy chain, we talked about that. We always fish towards the chain or the fish swimming at us. Really pretty, isn't that? It's amazing. I haven't seen very many daisy chains in probably the last 7-8 years. One of the things that's kind of interesting, if you fish alone, I try to avoid fishing over white sand. Fish don't like to eat very well over white sand, I've just noticed. But if you have a patch of weeds or dark bottom, that's where the crabs and the shrimp are. And fish bite better over the sand. You can spot them coming over the white sand better, but you fish them over the dark. What does feeding the animal mean? Feeding the animal is just like you know, when we play with a cat and you have a piece of yarn, if you throw it too close, they don't react. If you throw it too far away, they won't react. But if you get it just close enough and make it bump, make it move a little bit, they're going to reach out and grab it. The difference between a good fisherman and a great fisherman is the angler that can make that fish bite that doesn't want to bite. And the difference between a great guide and an okay guide is the guide who can find the fish that don't want to be found. So when I was fishing tournaments, I was always making it a point of fishing with the best guides I could get. And because I could get somebody else and fish a tournament, I wouldn't do it. It took me 3 years to get Dustin Huff to fish a permit tournament with me. I don't know how many rounds of golf. I don't know. It's like, dude, please. I was begging and pleading. And we finally fished the Del Brown, we won. And I said, let's just fish till we win. We won and we're done. Then I tried to get him to fish the Gold Cup with me when Timmy Hoover quit fishing. And he didn't want to do it. But it's really key. Like, guides are worth their money. You get what you pay for. We'll talk about that with rods and reels here in a little bit. But if you're going to spend X amount of money they're almost all the same. But if you can't get in with somebody, say, look, I'll fish with you some of the off-season days if you'll give me some of the good season days. So that way you're spending a little bit more, but you're going to have some great days. And a lot of times you'll have great days in the winter too. But here's a great example of getting the fly in the right spot. When they get cross-eyed like this, they're going to bite your bug. Right? And the key is, at what point am I going to yank that fly out of his face? Now. Just rip on it right now, right? I tell you what, it took the longest time for me and most people, I think, to keep from not yanking the fly out of a tarpon's mouth when he eats it. Because look, for most of us, we don't have that much time to fish. So when we get down there, I mean, how many people have you caught a lot of big tarpon? Very many? Any of you? Yeah. We know how it was like. I used to yell at my right hand. I would bump, 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 bump. He'd get like that, and I'd go, yeah, and I'd rip it right out of his mouth. I'd go, God, motherfucker, you know. It took forever.
Trout fishing.
Yes. Here's one of the things that's interesting. Watch how long it takes for this fish to actually get his mouth all the way shut. At what point do you set the hook?
When he turns.
You do not set the hook until you feel the weight of the fish in your stripping hand, right? Because if we set the hook with a rod, if we go to set the rod here, the tip of that rod's going to bend, right? So yeah, I can set the hook really hard as I can. And I'm going to show you here in a minute. I'll stick that fish, but when he jumps out of the water, he's falling off the hook every time. You have to just keep right here, and until you feel him in that stripping hand, until you feel the weight of the fish, like you got him in this hand here, now you can go to your rod. Until then, there's a good chance he's going to fall off the hook. That's why most people can't catch tarpon, especially the little ones, because the little ones, you go to set the hook, even with a stripping hand, their head moves. A real big fish, when you get tight, he's got a 40-pound head. That head's not going to move. So you can really bury the hook in a heavier fish, easier than you can a smaller one. So you have to wait to feel him in your stripping hand. What I want you guys to notice here, how am I setting this hook? That rod is critical angle, right? It's pretty straight. So I got a great chance because I'm hanging on right here. And if I hold that fish, he's going to be kicking his head and slashing, trying to get off that hook, but he's actually setting the hook himself if I hang on to that fly line. I don't have to do much because this fish isn't going to go anywhere. See, he's still here. I haven't done anything. I'm just holding him. And now once he starts to depart, at that point, I've already got him. So this slack coming off the deck of the boat, I am letting that line go through my fingers like this softly. I'm just feeding it off. You have 40 feet of fly line. You separate your hands. Actually, this hand could be over here with the reel up in the air. Separate your hands and just let the slack come through your fingers and let it go onto the rod and out and feed it onto the reel. Because if you hang on to that fly line, once that fish is departing, that's what happens. Yes?
What do you do when the fish jumps at you?
I'll show you that here in a minute. But you can see here, if I'm trying to hang on to that fish, I can't stop him. And if I could hang on even harder, I'm going to break him off. So now just let him go because you've done your job. You got a good hook set, boom, you got him. The rod's up against your waist here. I got good leverage. I'm holding him. When he departs, just let him go. And then once you get him on the reel, then you can take on the next phase of this whole thing. You can see how bony this rim is. There's not a lot of soft tissue here. That's why it's so important with big tarpon that we set the hook correctly. What's interesting about worm fishing, now we'll talk about that here in a minute, but with worms, the Pallola worm fishing, it seems like every hook is hooked right here in the button. That's why you can almost use, like, say, 30-pound bite tippet, 30 and 40-pound bite tippet, because they're not going to chew through. Let me go back here. So that's a form, whoops. So that's a Pallola worm, right? Little red tail, probably the same fly. And one of the things, too, when you get a fish on, you always try to see where that hook is. Because that'll help you identify, okay, do I need to protect something? Like if you can't see the fly, he might have it deep. So if your leader's coming out of his mouth, you might not want to do a whole lot of this kind of stuff. Because every time you do this, you're chafing that bite tippet across that rough mouth. Because this top edge is extremely rough. So in that situation, you might want to fight that fish a little differently. This fish bit this fly over here in a matter of just a millisecond. That fish was all the way over there. And don't ever say I got him. See that little black fly right here? I probably said I got him on that one. I got him on that one too. See that little green toad flying up here? Okay, fighting the beast. You can see the critical angle here, fairly straight rod. I should be actually not pulling so hard because this fish's head is out of the water. See the critical angle? See how low that rod tip is to that fish? See how I'm hanging onto the fly line? I've got a pulley. I'm going to talk about fish fighting here in a little bit. This is Nikki. We're going to talk about fighting fish separately, but you can see how I'm hanging onto my fly line. I am creating drag myself. Because if you hook a big fish against a heavy drag and he jumps out of the water, he's most likely going to break you off. You don't want a big fish falling against a very heavy setting.
So you fish with a loose drag and basically regulate it with your finger.
What I do is I'll show you my drag is fairly light, and so I'll hang on because I know how to pull 12 pounds, and when the fish jumps, I just let go, right? And also too, if you're chasing a fish down, you see a lot of people palming their fish. Just use the drag, okay? Because the drag is more consistent and more even. Because the handle could hit you in the thumb, you could break your fish off. And with the fish fighting, I'll show you here. But you can see how my fingers tape my little finger because you always have your hands on your fly line. When I'm casting, right, even when I make a long cast, I never let go of the fly line. It comes up and I feed the fly line through my fingers here and I come here. Now, if I have to, I can make my first strip right here because I never let go of the fly line. If you let go, you got to get reattached, right? So you make your cast, you shoot it out, you're here, you can slide it, now you're already feeding the fish. You hook the fish, clear the fish, get him on the reel. Now he takes off, he's offshore. Now this is the only time you don't have your hands on the fly line. But once you start to close the gap, you're reeling all that slack back. You can see my little finger. I used to always put a little piece of tape right in the joint right here, because that backing used to kind of cut me here. But I always want that little finger working to create as a line winder. I want that line even on that reel.
Where you start pinching when the fly line comes in, or you're pinching on the backing as well?
You know what I mean when I'm fighting the fish?
Yeah.
So,
So you say you never let go of your fly line, right? And when the fish run,
yeah. So
it's
the
only backing.
so if the fish is running and the backing's going out, that's the
You
only.
hold that backing?
I don't have any touching. I just let them go. That's the only time I don't have contact
And
with.
do you keep reeling until you see fly line comes in, or?
Yeah, so once the fish is 200 yards away and he slows down, we got the motor down, we're gonna go chase him. Now I'll start winding, right? So my little finger is winding. And one of the things that's really important if you fish alone, don't ever follow your fly line to the fish, right? Because the fly line coming onto the reel is gonna be too much slack. You want some tension. So take your boat off to the side. So if the fish is out there, your fly line's going over here into the water. Keep the boat running sideways to your backing. That way when you're reeling your backing in, it's tight on the reel. I have learned this the hard way. Because if you follow your fish, the backing is going to be loose. And at some point, that loose backing, any sort of loops, will find something to go wrong. So make sure when you get that backing on the reel, it's on there nice and tight. And so now I'm reeling in my fly line and I'm just trying to keep control of everything here. And that's the only time I'm not touching the fly line or backing is when the fish is running. See the little finger working for me? Okay, let's talk about bowing to the fish. So if you have a really good solid hook set, right, and you miss a bow, it's not going to fall off. You hear this, bow to the fish, or otherwise he throws the hook. A lot of times, I think that comes from spin fishermen when we're throwing plugs, because when you hook a big fish with a heavy jig or a plug in his face and he throws his head, the weight of that plug will dislodge the plug. So I think with bait fishermen, spin guys, and I've experienced myself, if you don't bow and he throws it, he can still throw it off. But I'm trying to throw more of a bow into a fish when I'm spin fishing or traditionally fishing for these things. But with a fly rod, I always like to have a little bend in my rod, right? Because if it's late in the fight, you've been fighting this fish for 30 minutes, that hole might have gotten bigger. He sticks his head out of the water. He doesn't have much energy. He's not doing much. But if you throw some slack, that fly could fall out of the hole and you lose your fish. So you'll notice here a couple series of photographs where you can see the rod now. I'm actually going to lay this fish back down. I'm just laying him back in his bed. I'm just going to lower that rod tip. Here's my son, Nicky. Watch the rod. See how it always has tension? But he is bowing.
There's no slack.
There's no slack at all. Now, I'm embarrassed about this because I would never be sitting down like this trying to bring this fish to this guy. This is actually a big fish. I never reach up like that, although I won a lot of tournaments back then. You can see where the rod tip is to this fish. See, now I can direct this fish's face to him. See, I got leader up in my reel. Now he has a chance to grab the face. See, so that rod is, what, 6 inches, 8 inches from the fly. Don't ever let anybody touch your leader. What happens is, unless you're using over 20-pound tests, right? When you get tight, that fish does that, you're gonna break off. So unless you really have an experienced person to grab your leader, don't let anybody grab it. He can grab the bite tippet up here, but this is Timmy Hoover. He's a buddy of mine. We won a lot of tournaments, so he knows what he's doing. But I'd probably still yell at him, don't touch my leader. This is one reason why we want to learn how to catch our fish quickly. You know, shark predation. Anyway, all right. Do you have any questions by chance? Yes, sir.
You talked about the string of tarpon coming, you prefer to cast to somebody who's not quite in the rest of the group. And hope on that. I have found, and it doesn't apply to tarpon particularly, but other fish, if there's a gang of them, you throw a fly in the mixed, they're competing with each other.
Yeah, that works for
This guy
sure.
wants to grab it so he doesn't get it, even if he doesn't really want it. So an individual fish, and I'm talking about just me, is more likely to pass it up because he's not competing with anybody else.
Right.
Are tarpon different that way?
Yeah, absolutely. If they're swimming down the ocean like that, they're not feeding. The reason why the fly works best during the middle of the day is because they're not feeding. Tarpon feed at night under bridges where there's a lot of current and a lot of food coming. During the day, they're traveling. They're looking for a place to hang out the next night. So they're not eating. You throw a mullet at them, throw a crab, you might catch them with a crab. The fly is the best because that fish doesn't know how the fly got right here. Now you can start teasing, bump, 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 slide it, bump, 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 boom, I got him on. That's why the fly is the best bait in the middle of the day. So they're not feeding. Now, if you were, say, fishing in a certain blitz, like a striper blitz in the north or a false albacore, then you want to throw it to the herd. A school of bonefish in the Bahamas, throw it to the middle of them. I'm talking tarpon fishing that are swimming down the ocean because these are sensitive fish that are hard to catch. So we can turn the light back on wherever that light was.
Andy, would you ever, if you're fishing a string on the ocean, you know, you said you don't fish to the first fish, but would you ever cast, like, say, 20 feet in front of the school, let the first fish
Go by?
and then fish them?
No. I try not to have the fish swim under my leader. If I want to fish to a fish that's trailing, I'll put it on the back of the lead fish. That's the best because you might spook that lead fish. He might see your fly. If it's not moving or he sees your leader or shadow or something, I just always try to keep everything fresh.
When you're reeling in slack, I mean not slack, the backing or the line, you're using your pinky to adjust it so it's uniform?
Yeah,
on
I'll
the
show
reel?
you. Yeah, let me show you. Let me grab this reel here. So if you guys want to slide over here to the front, then I can start talking about this here. All right, buddy. So why don't you come back over this way? Yeah, so if I'm reeling the backing, I can use a couple fingers, my little finger, like a lot of times I'll have my hands on the rod, you know, but my little finger is best because I can move it back and forth here like this. So if I got 200, so if I have 200 yards of backing I got to reel in, I'm like this. See how I'm just moving it back and forth? Now it's on perfectly. Because if you get it stacked up, it could bind at some point. I've always been pretty conscious of that. So let's just talk about fighting fish. If I bend the rod to fight a fish, I'm going to the weakest part of the rod and the weakest part of my body, my bicep. I can't hang on. Let me try to get that barbell up. Okay, I've got the barbell up. If I take a half a step closer, I'm toast. I go here. Look how much easier that is. Look, I lift with my legs. Critical angle, right? If I match this rod to my body, when you're in your garage doing this, if I take the barbell up off the ground, right? So that's relatively easy. So my arms are fairly straight, and I can fight fish like this. There's a little bend, but not a lot. Because if I take one step, if I lift that barbell up off the ground, and I take one step closer, I'm straining, right? I'm toast. So that's, but if you're straight like this and you're really tight, the fish even breathes the wrong way, you're going to break them off. So you want to make sure you have a little bend. So be careful. Like a green fish, you can stop a green fish, but a lot of times when you're pulling really hard on a green fish, you can back him up, but he's gonna jump. So if that fish is green and you're fighting him and he's close right there, and you see him back up, get ready to give some elbows. I do a lot of this stuff here. Like a lot of times the fish wants to move, but he's tired. So I only know he's gonna move a foot or two. If he surges a little bit, kicks his tail, I'll do this. But I never let go of my fly line. Now, once he stops, I can back him right back up. So when it comes to hanging on your fly line, I've always had it's under the first 2 fingers, over the next 2, then over these, woven between 2 fingers at a time. That way, when I pinch it, I'm full drag. But now I'm back to, I have fished 40 years for tarpon with like almost no drag. Because I want to be able to create drag here, with my hands. Now, if you do use drag, you have to understand where you're at in your drag. How many reels do we have where you keep turning and turning and turning and turning and turning and turning and turning, and then you pop them off?
Fish starts to follow the fly and they get really aggressive on it. How do you vary your retrieve when they start to get really aggressive on the fly but haven't eaten it? And how does that vary between different flies, like a Pallola worm or like maybe a toad?
Well, okay, so I learned this a long time ago permit fishing. Like a permit will get up on your fly, and if the tail's not kicking, he's not digging it to the bottom. He's not pinning it. So I used to wait. So if I threw to a permit and he tipped up on it, I would just leave my fly there until I'd see the tail do this, and then I'd strip strike. Or I'd just slide my fly, and he might slide forward, but I keep waiting to see the tail do this, to dig. A lot of times, if you're feeding a bonefish, keep feeding, and he's coming, drop it. Just stop it and see what he does. He might just come over and pin up and grab it, but give him a chance to eat it. And then maybe just slide it. Do more with the fly without moving the fly very far, right? So I used to feed tarpon by shaking my rod tip. Once the fish would get here to the truck right there, a little bit closer, I'd slide my fly, but I'd shake my rod tip and not really pull much line in, because I was trying to impart a lot of movement out there. Because the closer you get that fish to the boat, he's going to see you and spin off at some point. But it's amazing how much action the material of the flies do for you. It's just like casting, right? We want to build speed and stop the rod, let the rod throw the line. Sometimes we just want the materials to feed the fish. Like really big bonefish don't like a fast strip. We used to always use crab flies and just slide it and let them find it and pin it. And moving flies into position. Harry Spear, I used to like bonefish, and the school would move. And so I would try to strip the fly over in front of the fish, and he said, no, sweep the rod tip. So if I move my rod tip here, it's a smooth movement. I pick up my slack, and now I can start feeding the fish. So less is more. Big fish don't like things jumping. Any other questions? Yeah.
When you're setting the hook on a tarpon, I've lost several this year, where you feel the weight of the body, you're pulling tight, and they just literally turn their head, and you feel bink. So at what point, after you feel that tension, you go, okay, you don't want to say I got him.
Okay, here's the deal.
It's like,
You'd never give your fly line. Make him earn it,
yeah.
right? So let's just say I hook a big fish. I got him hooked, right?
Yeah.
And now you're trying to let him feed the fly line because he's leaving?
Literally, he'll just turn his head slightly when he feels that hook sticking, like barely turns his head. I had it so tight on there. I was so ready to set it. It just popped. The bites it.
Hit him harder.
Hit him harder?
Hit him harder.
Okay.
You're not going to break it.
No.
If you have a little bend in that rod here, you won't break it.
Okay. Go more. Double that.
Oh, hang on to that fish and just, hold him. And then if he wants to go ahead and let him go.
Yeah.
But make sure when you get when you get that bite, you feel this. You feel that barbell coming up. You feel a lot of tension in the stripping.
Like too much tension. So like literally just a flick of his head.
It was just bad luck.
I had a lot of bad luck.
Don't take it personal.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
We fish along the beach here a lot,
Uh-huh.
and so it'll be down 12 feet of water. So if fish are down like 4 or 5 feet, where do you want that fly rod?
You want the fly down there with him.
So if they're at 4 feet, you want it at 4 feet.
You want it right in his face. So you might use a sink tip. And I'll show you how to put weight on the fly.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Fly choice?
Yeah, I'll go to fly. I'm going to break out some flies here in a second. Yeah.
You're talking about sliding the rod, especially like tarpon fishing. What would be like a small slide and what would be a large slide as far as
To move the fly into
Yeah,
position,
exactly.
it would be like maybe moving the fly from where that barbell is to this chair
That'd be maximum?
here. Might even be a little bit further.
Okay.
Like if you're fishing the ocean, he's pretty far away, you make a long cast out in front of him, and he veers way to the inside, you just might slide it out and take another cast. But I wouldn't mind, I would slide it this far to the chair. If it's over here, I'd slide it out and recast. Yeah, any other questions?
How close will a tarpon come to the boat before biting?
I've hooked them, I would say here to the window, and depending on the water clarity. But I've hooked them really close with clear water too.
I find that snook will follow the fly all the way to the boat before grabbing.
Yep. You know, usually big tarpon in clear water won't do that, but over in the Chokoloskee area, you can find them really close by, you know. A lot of times you might even have your leader pretty close to your hands before you'll get a bite. Do you have a question?
Yeah, hi, you were talking about the mentors when you first started 40 years ago. You know, those guys were using like Medalist reels and fiberglass rods. I mean, it's just it's a whole different ballgame.
It's a different, really completely different game. You know, with where we've come with these rods, it's pretty amazing because if you feel this is a 12 weight, but you get a Marksman Z 10 weight, you go like this, you go, this has got to be a 7 weight, right? And they don't break. I mean, you got to do something really wrong to break them. 10 weight, 11 weight, boom. The swing weight is like incredible. This is our very first, this is a Pro Axis. This is really an old rod, and this is still a great rod, but this is a 12, I would never throw a 12 weight again. I mean, because the fly line, this is probably an 11 line, but the 12 weight fly line, the shooting head is so thick in a 20 mile an hour wind, it doesn't want to go into the wind. That line's too thick. Aerodynamically, it's terrible. And lifting, if you have the critical angle here, you know, the last fish I caught in a tournament was 127 pounds on a 10 weight. And we caught him in like 15 minutes. This is the angle. I caught, you can catch a 100-pound fish with a 9 weight. Because it's not about this. It's not. The best way to catch a fish is hand lining. This is the best way to catch a fish. So what are we doing with a fly rod? We're doing almost the same thing. It's just that it's containing the line. Right? A little bend.
So how do you choose what weight fly line that you actually use?
If it's pretty windy, I'll use like an 11. If it's calm, I use a 10. And the 10 weight is so good. You can throw that 10 into a 20 mile an hour wind, no problem. So a lot of times I'll use a 10 for everything. Any other questions? All right, let me go through my bag here a little bit.
Question over here.
Yep.
Bill fishing? Are you throwing a 10 weight? Or are you
No.
upsizing?
No, if I'm bill fishing, I'm probably throwing a 12.
Okay.
You know, because when they get close to the boat and they're deep, you know, you need to pull a little bit. 11 weight would be fine. But the problem is a lot of times bill fishing is throwing a heavy fly. So that 11 weight, the tip might be too soft to throw that big fly. So I'd probably use a 12. But a lot of guys are using 14s. But bill fishing, I mean, is not fly fishing. Let's get it right. What we are doing, we are catching billfish with fly rods. I have so many guys that want to come tarpon fishing with me because they want to catch a tarpon. I said, there's no fucking way I can take you tarpon fishing because you can't throw. They can't throw 70 feet. They don't know. One guy, the chairman of the board of the IGFA, Roy Croniker, he's caught like almost 7 Royal Grand Slams with a fly. But the best cast with a billfish is just, the boat's floating away. Get it behind the fish, pop it once, and you get them on.
And you're trolling.
You're just moving.
You're trolling in the boat.
Yeah, the boat's moving. You're jigging it.
It's not fly fishing.
It's fly fishing with fly gear. But I want to see that guy go win a permit tournament or a bonefish tournament or a tarpon tournament. They don't. A lot of them are not even interested. I was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, with Roy a couple summers ago. I said, let's go to the backyard and cast. We walked out and he said, well, I don't fly cast. I said, let's try. He wasn't even interested. And most of these guys use straight 80.
That will be the same thing when the guy gets off the boat and follows the permit up in the flat and he grabs it when you have 20 feet line.
You see these guys in Belize somewhere. You see the guide out there with the fly line. You're not catching that fish. You hooked him. And then they give me trouble by calling them out. Look, we fly fish because we're willing to accept the liabilities of fly fishing. We are trying to do something harder. That's why we fly fish, and that's why we need to learn how to fish with 16 and 20 pound tests and even less. Because we want to get better, right? So why would we go tarpon fishing with 30 and 40 pound test leaders?
I actually wanted to ask you about that. Are you doing like at any point a double bimini type of rig?
I used to, but my leaders have changed, and I'll show you. So now I can show you here when I get to my bag. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are you seeing over time fewer and fewer large schools in the Keys and tarpon migration?
I don't see a lot of big schools anymore. I used to see herds of, they would be coming by for like minutes. I don't see that anymore. Just too much boat traffic. They're there. They're just swimming in deeper water. But we can. Yeah, that too. Yeah.
COVID was fun, huh?
COVID, yeah. No, every fish that saw the fly bit it. It was crazy. And then I went trout fishing in Colorado, and there was nobody there. Not one airplane at the airport. I had a chance to show my son what I saw growing up when I was 7 years old. 1967. It was pretty cool. Let me show you a little bit here. Do you want to see what I take out on the boat? You guys interested in that? Yeah. So, and then we'll talk about flies and leaders and stuff like that. So, what I do is I have these spools of leader material. So, I use Scientific Angler, regular monofilament to build my leader. And then my class tippet is going to be hard mono. Let me see if I have any hard mono. This is regular mono. So here's hard mono. So see the difference in the thickness? Yeah. That's hard mono. So 20 pound test is going to be like rope. Wow, this is 40. I don't have any 20 here. So that's 30. Huh. Maybe, hang on. Do they have 16 here anywhere? Here's hard mono. Let me show you here. So it's important to tie your class tippet with hard mono because it's going to be thicker than regular monofilament. And so some of these fish will have, with the scales that are on them, they go around sea fans. The hard mono will help you survive that type of stuff. So feel how thick that is? So that's 16 pound hard mono. So you get 20 pound hard mono, that's like rope. You can catch anything with this, for the most part. Maybe not a 500 pound blue marlin, but Tom Evans' biggest fish is a 275 pound blue marlin on 16. You can catch big fish, on this stuff. So what I do is I will have the material 50, 40, 30 to build my leaders.
No fluorocarbon.
I do on my bite tippets. So these are my bite tippets here, these tubes. And what I'll do is the fluorocarbon I will tie between two trees and leave it out there for like a week. Right? So now when I pull it out of the tubes, it's going to be nice and clean and nice and straight. Because if you try to straighten this off the spool when you're out there fishing, there's always going to be a little curl something, you know. So I make sure that these are nice and straight. So that's how I do it. I just take the whole spool, the whole however many yards, tie it between two trees, let it, the wind or the sun get on it and let it straighten out. Some people will put them in dishwashers in a copper tube, I guess. I guess that works. I've never tried that. So I have, in my boat, to tie a new leader, I have 40 and 50 pound fluorocarbon bite tippets. When I would use to tournament fish too, you can pre-tie your leaders and put them in something like this. So this is, you asked me about a bimini. Who asked me about a bimini? Yeah. So this is the old school way they used to tie leaders. So if I was in a tournament, I didn't have a fly stretcher box, but the flies would be all tied on the leaders and in a box. Let me pull this off here. So this is an IGFA leader, right? So once I tie that fly, I tie a double overhand right there, okay? So if I'm in my boat, I can pull this leader out. So the double overhand, right? It's figure 8. Put the tag through the first loop, out the second loop. What I do is when I pull this figure 8 tight, I don't get it too tight to flatten the monofilament. All I do is I kind of get it nice and snug here, and then my loop is decided by how far my tag is going to be off the figure 8. So at this point, I tie a half hitch. If I want a big loop, it's got to be pretty far off the figure 8. If it's a tighter loop, I get it a little bit closer, right? So now, this anchor knot, I don't pull it really tight because I don't want to flatten the mono. Now when I slide the figure 8 up against the anchor, at this point I can get the anchor a little bit tighter. And now when I pull the main line tight, I haven't flattened the mono. And when you use worm flies, if you get those knots too tight before you slide them together, it'll flatten the mono and the fly won't ride correctly.
Any reason for not using a perfection loop?
This is what I've always learned and what I fish with.
No, that's why, because it's like an unusual knot, at least what I know. So I was wondering, like, if you had a bad experience with a perfection loop and you stopped using it.
Yeah, I've never used the perfection. I've always used the improved Homer Road. So here you have a bite tippet, you know. So it's already pre-measured. I measured that. And what I'll do is these tubes here, if you want to fish IGFA legal, look, it doesn't matter to me how you fish, but if you want to fish IGFA, I have these markings here on my tubes. So the first and second mark right here, that's like 10.5 inches. So I can measure from the eye of the hook to there. So that knot, this is 12 inches, right? So this section from the eye of that hook to that knot, including the knots, has to be 12 inches or less. So you can see it's under 12 inches. So I can go catch a world record fish with this and not worry about it. But that's how I do it in advance.
And it's a blood knot right there?
It's what?
This one.
So that's an improved blood knot.
An improved blood knot.
And then my bimini's at the top. So when I was fishing tournaments, I use a bimini because if I want to change my flies, I cut above this knot here. And then what I could do is take from the top of the bite tippet, wrap this all up, throw it in my stretcher box, and I can use it again later. And I always wrap that 3 times.
But were you attaching that to a loop-to-loop?
I tied that, no. And I tie this knot with a blood knot to the butt section. So here, let me get a reel.
So you're actually using like that long stretch of the bimini to use it many times. To tie
Yes.
different blood knots.
Yeah. So the only line you're sacrificing is when you cut that knot, you're just tying another knot. But if you tie it like this, which is how we all fish now. So here's my butt section. So off my fly line, I try to tie a full about 6 feet. This is a little bit short. That's my first butt. That's 50 pound. Then 30 pound, I go from here to my nose. That's 30. And then my class tippet is 16, right? So my 16 has to be at least 15 inches, but I tie it more shoulder width, because shoulder width, you can see how much stretch I have there? So if I tie that 15 inches, it's almost too tight. So if you get a fish that bites it going away and it's really tight, you can break it. And then you have your bite tippet here.
And that's hardened 16?
I'm sorry?
That's hardened, or that's fluoro.
This, it depends. Like the fluorocarbon will sink 4 times faster. So if you're fishing on the ocean with fish that are swimming a little bit deeper, you're going to use fluorocarbon. If they're really high on the top, use regular monofilament, especially in shallower water.
Eddie,
Yeah.
is that a nail knot to connect the butt section?
No, what I do is, as I cut the manufactured loop off, so then I bend the fly line here like that, and I tie an improved blood or Albright. And what I do is when I tie this Albright is if I leave it as an Albright, let me see here. Here's some 30. So when I tie this Albright, what I'll do is I'll do 7 turns. And when I start to, so do the 7 turns, right? All the way up towards the eye. Here, let me back this up a little bit. Let's just say this is 7 turns, right?
Yeah.
What I'll do is before I pull this tight, now if I pull this tight, especially if I got 50-pound test, and I get up towards the end of the fly line, with 50 pound on top of that, it's going to be big fat edge, and it won't slide through the eye guides very well. But if I pull those first 3 wraps over the end of the bent fly line, it'll create a taper. So this one here, you can see I pulled the first 3 wraps over the end of the Albright.
Yeah.
And then if I even put a little glue on that, it'll slide in and out. I personally never liked that joint of loop to loop in anything, even like down in your leader section. They used to always do that. Because the loop to loop, you have 2 knots and then the joint, right?
It loosens up a little bit also at times.
I'm sorry?
Like you will loosen up and
It's just gross. You got 2 knots and 2 loops versus having something, so in the old days, this would be, so this is my class tippet right here, right? So in the old days, this would be a knot, there'd be another knot here, and then 2 loops that are intersections. So it's just kind of, and clean water is just too much. That's much cleaner, right? All right, any other questions?
How are you attaching it to the fly line?
I just showed you.
Oh, is that what
Yeah,
you're
that was
doing?
so I cut off the manufactured loop.
cut off the loop.
I cut it off. I bend this and tie 50-pound Albright. And the first 3 wraps, I slide it over the end of the fly line here. And it looks like this. So you can see it's not a loop to loop. And that can be even probably a little bit cleaner. But you can see the first 3 wraps are in front of the Albright itself.
But that's because you're fishing for tarpon. Like if it was a different, smaller fish, you could.
I just
do
use a
like
nail knot.
Yeah.
I just use a nail knot.
Yeah.
You're not pulling that hard.
But you cut the loop off.
I do. Because the loops, and also too, like with the Cortland, the tag used to always come loose, on the leg of the loop. So I just cut it off. Okay, let me go through my bag here real quickly. So I always have a spare reel with my favorite line on it. I have 50, 40, 30 as far as the leader material in my bag, so I can tie a new leader. You do pre-tied leaders, so you don't have to waste your time on the boat. That's always an advantage. I have 40 and 50 pound bite tippets. You might want to use heavier have them stretched between two trees, so when you pull them out, you can tie perfect knots, and it's nice and straight. I always have a spare fly line, especially if you're traveling. I would take 3 or 4 or 5 fly lines. There's nothing worse than being on the other side of the world and you don't have something you need. I love that line. Those who fail to prepare to fail, right? So I'm always taking too much stuff. I always have binoculars, so if you're going to fish a basin where the fish might be rolling early in the morning, you can see if they're in there. You can look around and not motor in there, scaring everything. Rain gear, right? I always have a boga grip because we're always around big barracuda when we tarpon fish, and we always have a spinning rod with a tube lure. I'm not going to get a fly rod out to try to catch a cuda. The spinning rod's already rigged up. You got one on. Grab a hold of them and let them go. You're back to tarpon fishing. I always love having, these are great. The turtle box, I don't know if you guys have them or not. It's a great speaker. Fishing sucks. You can always have some fun listening to music. Sunscreen, lip gloss, glasses for me. Sometimes, you know, early in the morning, later at night, you can't see that well. I always have some sort of a light. And this bag I take with me so I have nausea medication because I get seasick if I'm marlin fishing or something. Advil. And I want to show you how to add weight to a fly. So I always have a spool of this type of weight, right? Wire. So you're asking about your fish that swim on the ocean in 4 or 5 feet of water, right? So if I take this strand of wire and I stick it through the eye of the hook here, and I lay it flat against the shank, now I can wrap it as many times as you want. And sometimes I put super glue underneath and then pinch it with a pair of pliers. That is an amazing way to fix a problem instantly.
I was actually trying to think, how would you change your game if you were fishing that where I live? Because I actually live in Costa Rica, so fishing over there is usually on river mouths, really deep water. So what I've seen people use is lead core, like after the fly line. Because over there you're not really casting at all. You're basically just jigging down a little bit and pitching it. But then your fighting is a lot different than it will be on a flat because you cannot hold that angle. The fish is all the way at the bottom.
Right.
So
that,
do you do it differently?
That's beyond my experience.
You use a very short leader. Is that just because you prefer to fish IGFA? Or?
A short leader?
Yeah, I noticed you use a very short bite tippet.
I only use well, to tell you the truth, I don't often fish IGFA legal now because I'm not fishing tournaments. I'm not a record fisherman. So my bite tippet,
Like, how long do you go?
I'll go this long. So
and how often are you retying your whole leader?
if you get, so if I'm not fishing IGFA, I will always fish 16 or less, maybe 20 if I'm bill fishing. I will not fish more than 20-pound test, right? So that's my bag. If I went marlin fishing last year with Los Locos, they're all using 80, I used 20. I caught my fish just as fast as they did. So what I'll do, if I'm tarpon fishing, this is, you know, the length of my butt section or my bite tippet. I'll tie a fly on here. I tie that to my butt section. So if I get a bite that scrapes this, I'll retie my fly on here, right? I get a bite, I retie here. Now that's getting pretty tight to retie again. So I might get 2 or 3 bites out of 1 leader, and you don't have to retie the whole leader. So I'm guilty of that, but in my world, for me, I can live with that because I'm still fishing less than 20-pound tests. Because my angling skills still have to prevail to catch that fish. This doesn't really matter for the most part. That fish is going to bite here or here, but that difference is not that much of an advantage to make me feel like I'm cheating. I guess that's the ultimate. You got to look yourself in the mirror when it's all said and done. So then I'm going through my bag here. I always call these tarpon whistles. With slow, light one up, they're going to come. They'll start swimming. I always have line glide in my boat. I'm always cleaning my fly line. If you feel like it's a little grainy when you're false casting, clean it. What did I do with that? I should have shown you that. I cleaned that fly line I had in the parking lot here today before I even started casting. It was like all black. It was crazy. Clean your fly lines. It's going to shoot and slide easier. Dude wipes, your wives. The bait well is not the toilet. Tell her to hang it over the edge. I have so many guys. I get back and there's a big old brown bomber in my bait well. When you're fly casting, sometimes you'll hit your fly against the casting platform and bend the tip of your fly. You got to have some pliers, right? I throw a little WD-40 in here. It keeps the file nice and sharp and clean, keeps the rust off. And I always have 2 pair of glasses, one for high sun and the other one for low sun. And then, you know, if you don't have a pair of Van Stalls, these are the best. They do not rust. They will last a lifetime. These are the best pliers you can get. They're expensive, but they're worth it. Just like anything else, you know, this is a lifestyle. And if you're going to do it for a long period of time, you might as well start with the best. All right? So that's pretty much it. The flies. So I brought some of my flies that you can take a look at here. I would say these are the only flies you'll ever need to go tarpon fishing. These 3 flies, maybe throw in a palola worm. So these are the only 3 flies you'll ever really need. And you don't even really need this toad. So your shrimp fly, like a sand devil, a black and purple, works anywhere, especially in low light, and maybe a worm fly of some kind. You'll catch all the fish in the world you need with those 3 flies. And there's a, you know, then you can kind of wiggle, you know, so if the water's a little bit muddy, you know, use the black fly. If it's super clean, you can use the worm or like a sand devil, maybe any of these other flies I have here. One of the key things, if you're a fly tyer and you use paracord for your worm flies, if you take the core out of the paracord, the strings that are inside of this, and fill it with 40-pound monofilament, about 6 strands, it stiffens it up, so that will not foul. A lot of the flies, if you're looking for palola worm flies in stores, make sure that they're filled with something and they're stiff. Because these palola worms swim in a very straight line, they just kind of wiggle and shake. But this will foul if you don't have it filled with something that'll stiffen it up.
What time of the year is that active, the palola flies, the worm flies?
These fish know this bug. I tell you what, you could go somewhere right now and throw it and catch a fish with it. I fish this as soon as I get to the Keys. We used to just wait till the worm hatches. Yeah. You go down there in April, throw it. I'm throwing this on the ocean, and I'm throwing this on the ocean.
You don't fish bigger than a 2-aught hook, I think, right?
Most of my flies, like this, is that's a 1-0. No, that's a number 1. That's not even a 1-aught. So I fish a lot of really small little hooks. So I first started using like little 1-0 hooks with Timmy Hoover. I mean, this is going back 25 years. When I first showed up with the little hooks, because we were trying to catch these really big sensitive fish in these basins, and it was hard to get the fly to the fish without the fish turning off of the fly. So I said, man, let's just try to throw these little flies and see what happens. And Timmy was like kind of kiddingly, you know, he was like joking at it. I said, let's just see what happens. Well, we could get the fly to the fish because we're using the current. Current was sliding the feathers in there. You bump it twice, boom, this little hook, you get tight, it's like a hypothermic needle. It was going right through the bone. And we started smashing these giant fish. And that was one of the first stages of a revolution, if you will, in tarpon fishing.
Are circle hooks used for flies too?
Some people use them, but I don't like it, and I'll tell you why. If I have a fish coming to me and I make a cast, and he bites my fly and he keeps coming, sometimes you can't keep up, right? Because you got to get tight with the stripping hand. So if it gets close enough, what I'll do, I'll just trout strike as hard as I can. Up like this as hard as I can. Just try to get connected. I'll get him tight, and then I stomp on my boat, and when he turns, I'll lower my rod and get tight and try to set the hook. You can't do that with a circle hook. Because a circle hook, you got to get tight with double hand stripping or whatever, but you can't ad lib with a circle hook.
You tie your own flies?
I tie a lot of these. Like my shrimp flies, I tie. If I can buy them, I'll just buy them. And especially trout flies. No, I do not tie trout flies.
How long of a leader are you throwing on the ocean side and then on the backcountry?
The backcountry, I would throw maybe a 10 to 12. More like a 10 because it's off-color water. But on the ocean, I'm throwing 13 to 15-foot leaders. And also making sure I've got at least a clear tip fly line. I use the Scientific Angler clear tips.
When you tie your fly to your leader, do you always use a loop knot? Do you ever snell your flies?
I always have a little, I tie this knot right here. It's an improved Homer Road.
What's it called?
It's an improved, a Homer Road used to be just an overhand knot. You go through the eye of the hook, through the overhand and tie the anchor knot. An improved Homer Road is a figure 8 knot where you go through the eye of the hook, through the figure 8, get it kind of tight, and then tie your anchor knot. All right.
So you present the fly, you're stripping, you set the hook, and after you get into the line, to the reel, do you reset the hook
No.
at all, or just
No.
start?
You see all these old videos of these guys doing this crap.
Yeah.
You gotta, when you go like this, you're bending the rod tip. You saw me, right?
Mhm.
Trying to set the hook with the rod tip. Does nothing. You either get them right here or you've lost your chance.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then you don't worry about it. You either have them or you don't. But doing this kind of stuff and doing this kind of stuff, one is your line's coming off. So your drag's not set really that tight. So if you do this, you have no resistance. You're just pulling line off the reel, right? I used to see these videos of Billy Pate, right? The challenge of giant tarpon, he's doing this stuff. Unless you have a tight drag where it's locked up, you're just pulling line off the reel. All right. Any other questions? Yeah.
How often do you two-hand strip?
I do it a fair amount. Like I'm almost always worm fishing now. If I'm fishing the backcountry or over in Chokoloskee, then I'll one-hand strip. And also too, if you find yourself having, if you're struggling yanking the fly out of the fish's face when they bite it, double hand strip, even with the feathered fly, because you can bump, 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 and then when you get tight, you have two hands on it. But you can still yank it out of their face. All you have to do is just turn sideways. All right, anything else? You all good? Well, I'm going to be here. You're welcome to come up and ask some questions, look at my stuff that we have here. And
May I see one of the worms?
What's that?
May I see one of the worms?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have one on the table if you don't want to take a mess.
Anyway, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.